Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Resident Rulebreakers. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Camille.
And this is our last podcast of 2020. Thank you for listening to all our podcasts this year. It's been a rough year for everyone with a global pandemic on our hands that doesn't seem to want to disappear anytime soon. So.
No, even though we have a vaccine, they finally approved one. So, well, two. First people to get it are healthcare workers and people who live in nursing homes and stuff. So,
which is only fitting. They're the ones that are exposed the most and more susceptible to dying.
Yeah, but
exactly. They are going to be doing a plot line during the premiere that's setting COVID in flashbacks. The one thing that we revealed this last week was that the season 4 will be taking place after COVID has become under control. So what they're doing and showing the COVID part in the premiere is in a flashback scenario. So many of these plot lines that never got wrapped up, I'm hoping they're going to be wrapped up this way too. There's a new promo that just released this. It tied in the wedding some, but it was majority on the COVID, and it revealed new material that we didn't know. We're suspecting that Mrs. Pravesh passes away from COVID.
How did you get that from the promo? I did not get that.
Okay, there's a scene with Devon and his father via Zoom, and Devon's father is depressed, and Devon tells his dad something about his mom. And anyway, the point is, looks like they've gone through a lot of heartbreak.
Well, we know that Notarile is sick. So.
Yeah, well, they did say that there was a character who was going to get sick and be fighting for their life. That looks like it to be Nurse Hadley.
Yeah. So for those who don't know who Nurse Hadley is, she's a Black lady who did karaoke in a couple of episodes. So Nurse Hadley seems to be in danger, but also we also got some cute little pictures of Nic and AJ looking at each other. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we definitely have more stuff now than we had just within the last 2 weeks. And remember, like we said last week, that the premiere will be titled "A Wedding, a Funeral," and I'm assuming the funeral part is probably Mrs. Pravesh, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the wedding obviously is iconic. So, but
that'll be an impactful storyline on Devon to lose his mom to this, though.
Yeah. Hopefully that I can't even imagine.
And they predicted a more deadly second wave that would hit right around the holiday season, and they were spot on. We've had some of the deadliest days in the United States in the past month than we've had in the past century.
Yeah.
All due to COVID. I was checking to see when the reruns for the show, like they were going to air the last couple episodes of the season prior to the premiere. Well, we have that information. 319 will be airing on Christmas Eve night at 8 p.m. on Fox, which is the episode that this podcast is about, support system.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little Christmas present to everybody to be able to watch a rerun of The Resident on Christmas Eve. And then 320 will air the following Tuesday on December 29th at 8 p.m.
Yeah. The Resident.
So y'all can go check out those episodes, and obviously this podcast is about 319 support system. With support system, episode 319, we mentioned last week that it was written by Marqui Jackson but it was also co-written by Michael Notarile, who we've mentioned before as well. Yeah. And it was directed by Kelli Williams, who also directed episode 219, which is Snowed In, the episode about the blizzard in April.
Yeah. So, that episode, she directed her mother. I remember. That was the
same director as that episode, so it's kind of funny.
My favorite scene in that episode was when Nic like fought so hard to keep her alive long enough to get the guy to.
and she just says "F you."
Oh, that was too funny. I was expecting. I know I wasn't the only one who was like expecting a romantic reunion.
No, it wasn't that. Even Nic was expecting something a little bit different than that. But speaking of Nic going into this particular episode support system, in this episode, she spends her time helping. She helps with this homeless organization that helps the homeless in the Atlanta area. Yeah. And the man that pretty much runs it has having health problems with his home that he can't afford to take care of. And Nic like forces him to address it.
Isn't that her co-star from Revenge?
Yes, it is. So Connor Palo plays what's his name? Isaac. Yes, his name is Isaac. Plays Isaac, and he has pulmonary fibrosis. His hair is growing faster. It's genetic, and he was actually in the foster care system till he aged out of it. And he never met his bio family, so he was pleased to have a connection with them. And AJ, being adopted, helped Nic get Isaac in touch with a cousin, I think. So he had some type of support after he went through his lung transplant. So I think for AJ, it was like, I could have been this guy. So whenever his storyline that he was adopted is brought up, AJ thinks about the life he could have had, and he's grateful.
So, I think who's ever grown up in a family that isn't biologically theirs, I think it is natural to wonder what ifs. You know what I mean? I was in foster care too. So as a person who grew up in foster care, spent 8 years in foster care, there are times too where I wonder, what if I had told my teacher, what if, I never was put in foster care, what if I never did this, what if I never did that? And I stopped myself from thinking, because the thing about it is, I know for a fact that the result would have been worse than what actually was. You know what I mean? It's like I said, for me anyway, anytime I start going through that road of the what ifs, what if this, what if that, what if this, what if I stayed at home, what if this, what if that, I stop, because I realize my life is good. You know what I mean? In being in foster care and being away from my biological home and being loved by my foster parents, etc., was a big part of why my life is good. So, I know for a fact the what if would have led to a far worse fate than, you know what I mean, than if I had, than the reality of my situation.
So, and I think AJ gets that too. So his what if is, I could have been there, but he knows his fate turned out much better than that what if. But to see Nic realize what was going through his mind before he even said it, I mean, she knew enough about him at that point to get for it to click. And but Nic and AJ were the ones helping him in this one. And at first, Nic offered her and Conrad to be able to take care of him while he was recovering from his lung transplant, and he ended up getting a whole family that he didn't ever know before to help him through something like this. But the big plot line of there's two other big plot lines in the episode. The big one really that continues on from previous episodes is the Candida auris plot line, where it ties into pretty much the whole rest of the episode. The EMT that brought Don Long in has contracted it from her.
Yep.
And Cain and Kim are trying to cover it up. Cain's only doing it because Kim's got dirt on him.
Yep.
And we find out what that dirt is.
Yeah, later.
But it just goes to show that Cain became corrupt pretty early on in his internship.
I feel like he's this is why when someone asked in a group, like, what are some of your least favorite storylines of the so far? One of my answers was the whole redemption storyline of Cain, because too little.
We could have learned this in like episode 2 or 3, you know?
Yeah.
But the fact is, they tie in Ezra, who is Devon's intern, into Cain. They know each other because Ezra's mother, who was a nurse, covered up Cain's mishap when he was an intern. And you're an intern. Yeah, they're still learning, blah, blah, blah. But that's not really an excuse. You're a doctor at that point. Yeah, you're still learning, but you're still a doctor.
Yep.
And Ezra is learning that from Devon, from Conrad. Yep. But he tries to help Cain by giving Sophia, who's the EMT, the fungicide or whatever, the drug that stopped Candida auris behind their back.
I feel so bad for Ezra because it's like he was being used.
Yeah.
I mean, he did, tell the truth and gave up what happened, but it's just like, I hate. And
if you're like, because with Cain, what was it, like some medical instruments that got contaminated and they used them and patients died or whatever?
Ventilator.
Yeah.
Right?
What happened with his internship?
Oh,
Yeah. It was like a couple of medical instruments during surgery that were contaminated. The patients got infected and they died.
Yeah. What is up with? He should not be a doctor. Jesus.
I'm sorry, but yeah. Anyway, but when Ezra tells Conrad and Devon, obviously, you can see the reactions. Like, first off, Matt's angry face is spot on. Like, I was just like, he nailed it. But the confrontation between Conrad and Cain in the OR was long overdue. One, it should have happened like mid-season. In case, like, was this all about money to you? Is this all about your face being plastered up on the side of the building or whatever? And
that scene where Cain and Conrad talk in the operating room, I love the lighting and the production effect of that scene. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. I don't know whose idea it was to have Morris Chestnut cry, but it added an effect to that scene that should have happened mid-season.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it just really, the plot line was just too stretched out.
Disjointed. I just feel like I know that season 3 was a rush job, I guess, to finish because of coronavirus or whatever. But the whole thing with the last 2 episodes was not a strong point.
No, these are weak episodes, but I know that they had obviously more plan, and that plan changed dramatically when coronavirus interrupted it.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, from what I understood, the writers, the produce, the heads up people kind of knew it was headed this way. Like,
yeah, they did. Yeah.
Pandemic, they knew from like January, I don't know, that something was going on, whatever. And they didn't know it was going to be that serious, but they had a feeling something was going to, go on or whatever. So, I don't know. I don't know what's the turnaround here from like writing to post-production or whatever, but like they should have planned better, I think. I don't know. Like, in case something was going to happen, especially if they knew or they had an inkling it would. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They even, in this episode and in the finale, they reference coronavirus. In the beginning of this episode, Cain references, at least it's not airborne like the coronavirus. And that was just like the finale. That was a dub in after the fact.
Yeah.
But when you watch it, it's got this jarring effect. And there's a reference. I don't think it's on Hulu, but when they first aired the episode, there's a reference that says that the timing of the Superbug storyline was a coincidence.
Yep.
It really was the biggest coincidence that could have happened, because Superbugs happen everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that this one wasn't an airborne issue like what we're dealing with now that's out of rampant control. Speaking of candida auris, the person that suffers the most, there's 2 people that suffer the most from this in this episode. One of them is obviously the EMT. She dies.
Yeah.
And the other one is Derek, because his ventilator was down lungs.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get sanitized, despite the fact that Cain pushes for it.
Well, the guy went into, from what I understand,
they said, lunch. Oh, it's lunch. And they don't come back and sanitize it.
Yeah.
Their lunch break meant more to them than the health of the patients. Which sometimes you're just there to do a job. I get it. You're there for your paycheck and like be done with everything else. But in this instance, maybe they should have had someone who actually cared a little bit more. But anyway, Derek, he gets better. And then he gets worse. He can't breathe, and they decide to vent him. Unfortunately, with a contaminated vent, which you see in the finale.
A cord or whatever sticker, right?
Yeah. Which you see at the very end of this episode, you realize what's happened. Immediately, you're like, "Oh God, this isn't good."
That is actually one of my favorite things that they did on the episode, was you followed the machine everywhere. You know what I mean? And you're like, they're like playing hot potato with it seems like. But yeah, you're like anticipation. I know my anxiety was going off the roof watching this unicorn kind of thing going back and forth between people. It's like you know where it's gonna go, likely gonna end up or whatever, but like you're also hoping that it doesn't end up there,
because the resident has a way of doing things that sometimes they surprise you just a little bit. This one really wasn't that. You kind of could predict where they were going with this storyline.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, I mean, like, I just love the whole camera work, production, whatever, so the whole, like, zooming in on the unicorn, you kind of see, like, where the thing is going and how many hands, it felt to me like there were so many ways for this thing to have been stopped, or so many opportunities for Cain to say something or whatever. You know what I mean?
But it was in this episode, it was Conrad who actually alerted the health department to the infection.
Yeah.
And but the fact is, with Derek, he actually had time to plan when he went on the ventilator.
Yeah.
His wife was scared he wouldn't wake up. He was actually scared he wasn't gonna wake up. So Belle was really sweet in this episode. Like, take care of Kit anyway. Because Kit's concerned about her daughter, about her granddaughter, and rightfully so. And Belle's like, why don't y'all try like doing a legacy book? And I thought it was a really sweet thing he did for them, and try to help Kit out with her granddaughter. And so
that was so cute with the kids.
yeah. But there's definitely some underlying something between Kit and Belle in this episode. So, and I know a lot of people love them. I'm with them on that, but there's a lot going on. We'll see what happens. They're saying something might happen, but there's definitely something underlying that's referenced in this episode, and I definitely had feels. The only thing, and we've referenced this last week, was Shawnette was missing from a lot of episodes near the end of the season. She was in the finale, but she is not in these couple episodes leading up to it.
No.
And don't really know why, but the fact is, the lack of Mina is very jarring. And just one little one-liner from Mina could have made a difference in the episode, I think.
I still want to know why she left. Why she wasn't there season 3.
Finish off our last podcast of 2020. We just want to remind you that we do, in fact, have a Patreon account. Thank you to our
newest Patreon.
New Patreon.
But we have a newest patron, Jane. Thank you so much for contributing to the podcast. But thanks to everyone who's joined. Also, this year has been like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. This year has been so hard for everybody. It really has, with the pandemic, self-isolation, deaths, even. I know, speaking for myself, doing this podcast has been a positive for the year. You know what I mean? And we've grown so much. If we just think about what we were doing earlier this year and what we've accomplished since.
But the thing is, we know people are struggling this year. We know we all have, and in very various ways. This ways has changed. I think the many things that have come out of this pandemic, like the use of Zoom for classes, for working, for a lot of things, has changed the way the entire world functions. And I think it'll be one of those things that is going to be permanent, even after the pandemic's over. But for those of you who are listening to us who have lost a family member because of COVID, or are sick yourself, or struggling in some form of lack of a job or anything like that, there's at this time of year where it seems like money means everything. Believe me, we wish we could do something to help you, but you are in our thoughts, and we do understand. I've had a few Christmases in my past where the presents didn't happen, okay? My parents got divorced when I was 4, and the only thing we could afford that year was a Christmas tree that was cut down from the side of the road. It looked like a Charlie Brown tree. So I have some really poor Christmases, but what I learned from that was family means more than a store-bought gift.
Yeah.
And you got to remember the meaning of the holiday.
Yeah.
So just remember that it's not all about gifts, it's about love.
But it's also going to be hard for those families who had someone die this year.
Yeah, there was and I don't want to turn this political, but there was a quote from our incoming president at Thanksgiving, and it says, because he lost his son.
Yep.
And the thing he said the most that really hit home was, I know what it's like looking at that empty chair. Many families are going through that this year. They're looking at an empty chair.
Yeah.
So this year we really have grown. Last week we mentioned that we were close to hitting the 10,000 download mark since we started in March 2019. And we haven't hit it yet, but every day we get closer and closer. And and I expect that because the next season of podcast, which will start in January, to coincide with the show when it comes back, we'll hit it, because I think season 4, from what I've seen so far, is going to be, there's a lot of anticipation with the new season, and I'm hoping it lives up to its expectations. We're both very excited to get to watch it and discuss it as it's airing.
Yeah.
If you only started paying attention to the podcast and while we're in hiatus, go back and check out the first ones where we recorded soon after the episode aired, and within a week we had posted our discussion, which is exactly what this next season of podcast is going to do. It's going to follow exactly along with the show.
I'm just so happy that we get some new episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love watching The Resident. I do. So I'm really glad that, there's new stuff coming.
So we're excited to get to see it. We'll be back in early January to start talking about because even though we're not recording, the news of the show will still be releasing. So in the first parts of January, before the premiere, we'll do a podcast, and I can't say this now, we'll do a podcast that talks about everything that happened since we stopped recording podcasts for the year. We do have the Patreon and everything, and we do post behind the scenes things. We post early glimpses of the graphics I make. I post, we try to post BTS stuff a little bit more now that we have 3 patrons, but it's patreon.com/The Resident Podcast. And then you can always
we have what's that called? Before, what is that called? Exclusive stuff?
Exclusive stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can always contact us. We do have our email account, theresidentRulebreakers@gmail.com. Because we do, every now and then we do get emails from y'all, and we're grateful. But we want to make you aware that we're fans too, and we both have relatively normal lives, and we're not associated with the show. Fair warning to that one. Facebook. We do have a Facebook page for the podcast. It's the Resident Rulebreakers podcast. And there's a Facebook group called the Resident Fox Fans. And I know a lot of you are in it. It's the largest, the Resident Facebook group. And it's linked to our podcast page. There's like a little button at the top that says like join group. If you're not in it, join and answer all 4 questions. I promise you'll get denied by one of either myself, Camille, or we have 2 other admins, and we want to mention them, Brittany and Amy, because without them, it really couldn't happen. There are 4 of us, and not just me and Camille. So yeah, just answer the questions, please. Instagram at the Resident Podcast. We try to keep it up to date with all the things that have been posted and everything. And so we try to do that. And then Twitter, obviously, we try to keep it up to date as well. But so we have that is at Resident Podcast.
Yes. And
then, of course, how do you listen to our podcast? Well, if you're listening to us, you found some way to obviously. But for the people who may have stumbled on something and like YouTube does algorithms and stuff, you know. We have other ways of listening, just in case you're like bored with just the audio only on YouTube or whatever. We have Podbean, we have Apple Podcasts, we have Google Podcasts. That way, if you have an iPhone or Android, you can listen to us, okay?
Yes.
Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, we have our YouTube channel. Right now, it's audio only, unless we have an interview. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Happy Hanukkah to all the Jewish fans, if you are Jewish.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate this time of year. And Happy New Year.
Adios.
Bye, guys.